English step by step, present continuous. Step 1, intermediate, higher intermediate level. So when do we use present continuous? We use present continuous when we are referring to things that are happening now. Here's some examples. He's wearing a blue jacket. Now, in this case, we're talking about now. I'm not having lunch. So there's a negative example. That means at this moment, I am not having lunch. Here's a question. Are you waiting for a bus? Well, that means at this moment, what are you doing? Are you waiting for a bus? So we also use present continuous when we are referring to things that are happening during a temporary period in the present. So temporary or short term. Now this is different from long-term activities, habitual activities, activities which go on for many years or a long period. So this is things happening during a temporary period in the present. So here are some examples. She's living in Edinburgh this month. Now, in this case, it's a temporary situation. Next one, are we studying grammar this week? And then the last example is a negative example. They aren't preparing for the exam this semester. So you can see all of these are talking about temporary periods. So it's important to look at the difference between present simple and present continuous, because the two are often confused. The use of present continuous is different from present simple. We use the present simple for repeated or habitual actions. So let's look at the difference with some examples. Example 1. He's wearing a blue jacket. He wears a blue jacket. So what's the difference? He's wearing a blue jacket. That means at this moment or during this temporary period, he is wearing a blue jacket. He wears a blue jacket. Now that means long term. That means it's a repeated action or it's a habitual action. Example number 2 is a negative example. I'm not having lunch. So that means now, today maybe, I'm not having lunch. I don't have lunch. That means it's not a habit. It's something that I don't do very often. I don't have lunch. Now the next example is a question. Are you waiting for a bus? And that question is about the situation now. Do you wait for a bus? That means, is this something you do often? Or is this a habitual action? So you can think about the difference as temporary actions or habitual actions. So here's some more examples. Example 1. She's living in Edinburgh this month. She lives in Edinburgh. So the first one is short term, the second one is long term. Are we studying grammar this week? Do we study grammar? Again, temporary, long term. 3. They aren't preparing for the exam this semester. They don't prepare for exams. Again, this one is talking about a temporary situation and this one is talking about a long-term situation. So those are the differences between present continuous and present simple. So now let's look at the form of the present continuous or the structure of the present continuous. With present continuous, we use the auxiliary verb to be and the present participle. Well, the auxiliary verb, that is I am, you are, he is, they are, it is, etc. And the present participle is the verb plus ing, for example, walk, walking, go, going, study, studying. So let's look at some examples. Number 1, he is working in an office. Number 2, I'm feeling tired. Number 3, they're waiting for you inside. Now sometimes when you listen to English, it's difficult to hear the auxiliary verb, and it sounds like he working, or I feeling, or they waiting. But remember, the auxiliary verb is always there. Sometimes it's not pronounced very clearly, but it should always be part of the grammar. In informal and spoken English, the subject and the auxiliary verb are usually contracted. For example, I am becomes I'm. You are becomes you're. He is becomes he's. She is becomes she's. We are becomes we're. And they are becomes they're. So you can see sometimes with the contraction, it's difficult to hear the auxiliary verb. I'm, you're, he's, she's, we're, they're. Now, when we think about contractions, they can even be with nouns as well as pronouns. In these examples, we have pronouns, I, you, he, she, we, they. But let's look at some examples with nouns. For example, Susan. Susan is can be pronounced as Susan's. Susan's waiting for you inside. The cat is becomes the cat's. The manager is becomes the manager's. For example, the cat's feeling tired. The manager's working in his office. The computer is can become the computer's. The computer's freezing all the time. The present participle is easy to make. You just use the main form of the verb, the infinitive, and add ing. Let's look at some examples. Work becomes working. Wait becomes waiting. Think becomes thinking. Now sometimes there's a spelling change. There's a spelling change when the infinitive ends with E. Well, if the main form of the verb ends in E, like live ends in E, and this changes to living with no E. Give ends in E, and this changes to giving with no E. Freeze and freezing, move and moving, etc. With these verbs we drop the E, but there is no change in the pronunciation. For example, they're living in London. I'm not moving to the city centre. Are you giving me a lift? So for all of these, we drop the E, and there is no change in the pronunciation. So let's look at another spelling change. There is also a spelling change when the infinitive contains a short vowel followed by a consonant. Well, what does that mean? Let's look at some examples. In the word like, for example, club, the sound is a vowel, and this is a short vowel. Cla changes to clubbing. Now, when it changes to clubbing, there is a double B because of this rule. Another example, I is a short vowel in swim. And when we make the present participle swimming, we have to have double M. Swim changes to swimming with double M. Again, O in shopping changes to double P. Cut, the sound in cut, we change the spelling to double T in cutting. So there you have short vowels in club, a, o, a. Club, swim, shop, cut. And in all of these we have a double consonant. Examples. The party people are clubbing every night this week. Clubbing with double B. Example 2. I'm at the beach but I'm not swimming. Swim, double M. Are you shopping much during your holiday? Shopping with double P. Who is cutting the vegetables? Double T in cutting. So that's the end of step 1. In step 2, we'll continue looking at the form and look at some other points about the meaning, and then we'll go into some practice exercises. So be sure to move on to the next video.